Quick thing about family preparedness. With how unpredictable things have gotten, having basic emergency supplies isn't paranoid, it's just practical. Prep Starts Now has everything you need. Emergency food and water, first aid kits, power backups, roadside emergency gear, multi-tools, tactical flashlights, and what I personally like is that they have training resources. You're not expected to know everything in case of an emergency. Their Prep Academy teaches you how to actually use this stuff and build a family emergency plan. It's not about fear, it's about being ready so that you're not scrambling when something happens. I've arranged 15% off, the best deal they offer, with code 10MM at prepstartsnow.com. That's prepstartsnow.com, code 10MM. And it's very important to use the code so that you get the discount.
You're listening to 10-Minute Murder.
In 1968, a young woman selling encyclopedias door to door knocked on the wrong house in Portland, Oregon. The man who answered seemed interested in buying her books. He invited her inside his garage. She was never seen alive again. What happened in that garage over the next 16 months would become one of the most disturbing cases in American crime history. So let's talk about Jerry Brudos. On the surface, this guy looked like the definition of ordinary. Born on January 31st, 1939 in Webster, South Dakota, he grew up and became an electrician, got married to a woman named Darcy, had 2 kids, lived in a regular house in Salem, Oregon. If you passed him on the street, you wouldn't look twice at him. And that's precisely the problem, because Jerry Brudos committed the kidnapping, rape, and murder of 4 young women between 1968 and 1969 in Salem, Oregon. He earned 2 nicknames that tell you everything you need to know about his crimes: the Lust Killer and the Shoe Fetish Slayer. And yes, we're going to talk about why that second nickname exists, because the whole shoe thing is where this whole horror story begins. When Jerry was about 5 years old, he found a pair of women's high-heeled shoes in a junkyard. Something about those shoes triggered an intense reaction in him. He took those shoes home. He put them on his feet. His mother completely lost it. She scolded him repeatedly, forced him to give up those shoes, and eventually burned them. Now, you might think that would be the end of it, right? But that's not how the human brain works, especially when you're dealing with a kid in a household where discussions of sexuality is completely forbidden. The research on this case talks about something called incentive salience. Basically, when you combine powerful early arousal with intense prohibition and punishment, the forbidden object becomes irresistible. The shoes became Jerry's obsession. By age 12, his fetish had expanded to include women's underwear and lingerie. He'd sneak into neighbors' bedrooms with a friend to look at and smell women's undergarments. As a teenager, he progressed to stealing these items on his own. And here's the thing that makes this case so textbook for criminal profilers. He started wearing the stolen clothing in private. The fetish wasn't going away. The fetish was growing. In 1956, when Jerry was 17 years old, he crossed a line that should have been a massive red flag. He threatened a teenage girl with a knife and forced her to remove her clothes while he photographed her naked. When the police searched his bedroom after his arrest, they found an extensive collection of stolen women's clothing and numerous photographs. He got sent to Oregon State Hospital for 9 months of psychiatric evaluation. The doctors determined he had a schizopersonality disorder, which involves unusual thought patterns and behavior. More importantly for this case, they concluded that he wasn't delusional, he understood reality. He knew what he was doing was wrong. And here's the crucial part. The evaluations found that his violent sexual fantasies revolved around a deep hatred toward his mother and women in general. So what did they do? They released him. And roughly a year before his murder spree began, he was arrested again on the grounds of an Oregon State University women's dormitory for stealing women's clothing. At the time of his arrest, he was actively wearing women's pedal pushers, high-heeled shoes, and women's underwear. It seems as though the system had multiple chances to stop what was coming, but they didn't. And let me just state for the record, if you're a guy and you want to wear clothing usually meant for women, who cares? Wear what makes you happy. There's no problem with that whatsoever. The problem with Jerry is everything that came along with that. On January 26th, 1968, 19-year-old Linda Slauson was working as a door-to-door encyclopedia saleswoman. She accidentally entered Jerry Brudos' property, having confused his address with a neighbor's, believing she had an appointment with the homeowner. Jerry was working in his yard. He invited her inside, claiming he wanted to buy encyclopedias for his children. He didn't. What happened next in that garage is difficult to process. He knocked Linda unconscious and strangled her, but he didn't stop there. When he undressed her body, he discovered that she was wearing red lingerie. This triggered something in him. He spent hours dressing and redressing her corpse in different combinations of stolen underwear and shoes from his own collection, photographing the whole process while engaging in necrophilia. Then it gets worse. He severed Linda's foot from her body with a hacksaw and kept it in the family freezer in the basement. He used that severed foot as a mannequin to model his collection of high-heeled shoes for his sexual fantasies until it decomposed. He also kept the 2 encyclopedias Linda had hoped to sell him. He bound the rest of her body to a heavy cylinder head and disposed of it somewhere in Marion County. Her body has never been recovered. On November 26, 1968, during the Thanksgiving holiday, 23-year-old Jan Whitney disappeared after her car broke down on the highway. Her car was found locked at a rest area near Albany, Oregon. Jerry had encountered her, offered help, and instead strangled her from behind with a leather strap before raping her corpse inside his vehicle. He brought her body to his garage workshop. This time, he had access to a ceiling pulley. He hung her body from it, dressed her in different combinations of lingerie and high heels, and took photographs. Jan's body hung in that garage for 2 full days, while Jerry's children and wife lived in that same house. He later admitted to going out to that garage and violating her corpse whenever he felt the urge. 4 months later, on March 27, 1969, 19-year-old Karen Sprinker went missing after parking her car at a downtown garage where she was supposed to meet her mother for lunch. Jerry abducted her at gunpoint. He raped and strangled her, then removed her breasts post-mortem. Just 4 weeks after that, on April 23, 1969, 22-year-old Linda Saley disappeared from a shopping mall where she'd gone to buy a gift for her boyfriend. Her car was found abandoned with no signs of a struggle. Jerry had posed as a police officer or security guard to gain her trust. Then he raped and killed her. In May 1969, fishermen discovered the bodies of Karen Sprinker and Linda Saley in the Long Tom River, weighted down with engine parts. To me, here's what makes this case incredibly disturbing. Jerry Brudos maintained a completely normal life on the surface. True crime writer Ann Rule described him as quiet and gentle, an expert electrician. His wife Darcy and their 2 children lived in that same house where he committed these murders. His operational hub was his garage workshop, and he had one absolute rule for his family. No one could enter without first announcing themselves via an intercom system he'd installed. It was a sophisticated alarm system. It gave him time to hide evidence, bodies, or trophies if his wife or kids needed to come in. Inside that garage, police would eventually find a massive collection of stolen women's lingerie and shoes, lists of phone numbers for sorority houses and college dorms, and numerous Polaroid photographs. They found photos of a deceased woman hanging from the garage pulley with a mirror positioned on the floor underneath her feet to capture both the high-heeled shoes she wore and, in the reflection, Jerry himself taking the picture. They'd also found a severed female breast that he'd coated in epoxy resin and displayed on the mantelpiece in his living room, like a decoration, in the house where his children lived. On April 22, 1969, a woman named Gloria Smith reported that a man driving a distinctive Volkswagen Carmen Ghia had attempted to abduct her. Investigators discovered that while Jerry didn't own the vehicle, his mother did, and he'd been using that car on the day of the offense. Gloria positively identified Jerry as her assailant. That identification gave police probable cause for a search warrant. On May 30th, 1969, they searched his property. What they found was overwhelming and horrifying. The severed breast on the mantle, the severed foot in the freezer, copper wiring and engine blocks matching the weights used to sink the bodies in Long Tom River, shoes and lingerie everywhere, and photographs documenting everything. They arrested Jerry immediately. Jerry was formally charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder on June 4th, 1969. He initially pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, but after extensive psychiatric evaluation, every expert reached the same conclusion. He was legally sane. He understood the difference between right and wrong. His personality disorder and psychological dysfunction did not meet the legal threshold for insanity. Faced with the overwhelming evidence, he eventually pleaded guilty to 3 murders. On June 27, 1969, he received 3 consecutive life sentences at Oregon State Penitentiary. He was never tried for Lisa Slauson's murder because her body was never recovered. But the nightmare extended to his family. Based on a neighbor's claim that Darcy had helped move a body, she was charged in August 1969 with aiding and abetting in Karen Sprinker's murder. She maintained her innocence and was found not guilty in October 1969. Darcy divorced Jerry in August 1970, moved away, changed her name, and obtained a court order forbidding their children from visiting or writing their father. She had to completely erase that chapter of her life to protect herself and her kids from the trauma. Jerry's time in prison was difficult. Records show he was frequently assaulted and beaten by fellow inmates. Despite the abuse, including being hit in the head with a bucket of water, he consistently refused to name his attackers. The shoe fetish never left him. While incarcerated, he was allowed to receive mail-order catalogs featuring women modeling high-heeled shoes and underwear. He used this material for sexual gratification until the day he died. In 1999, he came up for parole, which was, of course, denied. The parole board reassured victims' families that he would never be released. Jerry Brudos died of liver cancer on March 28, 2006, at the age of 67. That's the story of the Shoe Fetish Slayer, Jerry Brudos. Thanks for listening today, and keep binging away if that's what you're doing right now. Quickly, here's an email from Vanessa in Denver. Subject, dinner party disaster. Joe, I once made the mistake of casually bringing up a true crime case during a dinner party. Apparently, who do you think the real killer was is not an acceptable icebreaker when people are halfway through the appetizer. Since you talk about these stories for a living, how do you handle conversations with people who aren't into true crime? Do you turn it off completely or accidentally traumatize them like I did? Vanessa, I think I'm in the category that you're in. I traumatize people. I don't mean to. Sometimes I just be talking and I don't shut up. And what's creepier about me is I'm not what you would call an extrovert. I'm more of an introvert that can pretend to be extroverted. So I'm not super talkative around people that I don't really know that well. So when the quiet guy starts talking about serial killers, I do get some looks. And it's fine. I get it. It's not everyone's thing. It's our thing, but it's not for everyone. Hey, if this is your first time listening, hit subscribe right now so that you never miss a story. Leave a 5-star review and tell other true crime fans about the show. Check out 10minutemurder.com to learn more about the podcast, read the blog, and contact me there. The episode that I'm working on that I know you're wondering about, Betrayed by Blood, the daughter who orchestrated her family's slaughter. Going to be sad, interesting, and disgusting as usual. I'm Joe, the host. Until next time.
You're listening to 10-Minute Murder.
Look, I'm not a doomsday prepper or anything, but over the last few years, power outages, storms, supply chain issues, it's just smart to have your bases covered. I found this site called Prep Starts Now, and it's not over-the-top survival stuff. They have practical emergency gear, first aid kits, 72-hour emergency supplies, car breakdown kits, water filtration, camping essentials, They also have a prep academy with simple guides so you can actually know what to do in an emergency, not just what to buy. The peace of mind is totally worth it. I've got you 15% off with code 10MM at prepstartsnow.com. That's the highest discount they offer. Prepstartsnow.com, and it's very important to use the code so that you get the discount.